Hey all you addicts out there, welcome back to another addicted fishing tutorial. My name is Jordan Kinnigy, and if you guys are new to this channel, be sure to go down here below and check us out. This is Addicted Fishing. We have all kinds of educational tutorials, fun, entertaining fishing content from all over the world, and just downright good stuff to watch if you like or are getting into fishing. So today is a little educational piece. We're going to be taking you out and giving you a little secret. Actually, it's probably one of the first things I ever fished for trout with. My dad brought me out here to fish in these lakes out here in Oregon and Washington with Velveeta cheese. So one of the biggest secrets or oldest tricks, I don't know, whichever way you want to look at it, but we're going to go over everything today. You guys stay tuned. We're going to hit it with you right now. So it's no secret that trout like any kind of cheese or garlic or odd scents that you normally wouldn't use for a lot of different fish species in the world. But one of the old tricks that we have here is this nice soft Velveeta cheddar cheese. And this it really is kind of like a Play-Doh. I don't know if you guys have ever, if you're from the Midwest, I know you've probably had a ton of this in your lifetime. But it's a cheese that's really soft. It's made for using dips and different stuff like that. It's actually really, really tasty. Terrible for you, but one of my favorite ways to cook some kind of chip dip or anything like that, or kind of like a taco topping. We're gonna make a fish taco today, but what we're gonna do here, we're just gonna tear this little guy open, and you can see how soft and malleable that cheese is. Just like so. Kind of almost like oh, they're gonna like it. Kind of almost like a power bait. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna form this stuff onto our hook. So realistically, there's about 3 different kind of setups that you're gonna wanna use to fish this cheese. What I have here next to me, 2 of these rods are just an Okuma Salilo ultralight 2 to 6 pound rod. I like a good ultralight rod because it's a lot of fun to fight a big trout on it, but it's also a lot of fun to fight the small trout. And it's got a very sensitive tip so that you can see those bites register on the end of your rod when you're fishing. What I have on here is an Okuma reel. It's a 3000 series reel with about 20 pound or 10 pound braided line on it. I like the braided line because it allows a lot of sensitivity, all the way down to my swivel. And this setup that I have in my hand is a bottom fishing setup. So I have bottom fishing, I have a float fishing, and I have a trolling setup. And that's a good way to use this bait in 3 different areas on the lake. So what these each one of them do is kind of covers a different water column in the lake and a different feeding habit of those fish. So the bottom fishing one, I have my 20 pound test all the way down to my half-ounce lead. You can use any kind of slide weight, lead, punch a hole in some pencil lead, but I like this to slide so that I can see that bite registering on the end of my line. Down to a barrel swivel. I just have a fisherman's knot tied off to each side of that barrel swivel with about a 12 pound fluorocarbon leader. I'm using a 12 pound here, which is a little heavy because we have some big fish in this lake, but I'm gonna use a fluorocarbon most all because of the iridescence of that line. It's really hard for those fish to see that fluorocarbon, and it blends in with the watercolor, whatever watercolor that might be. It's kind of a clear colored line. What I have is about a 4 foot, 12 pound leader, all the way down to my number 2 mustad bait hook. And this has the little spurs on the back of that hook shank so that it keeps that bait or that cheese, in what we're talking about today, on that hook well when you go to cast and do different stuff like that. So the nice part about this cheese, when you're using it on the bottom setup at least, is it floats well. Once you get it down in the water column, it becomes neutrally buoyant and it floats up off the bottom, so it'll keep your presentation off the bottom of the lake and allow those fish to come over and smell it. And it's nice because it's a very stinky, pungent smell. It's got a lot of oil and a lot of fat in this cheese, so it makes it really, really smelly for those fish down there on the bottom. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna just put that bait right along the hook shank there. I'm gonna take my fingers, just like I would some kind of power bait or any kind of soft trout bait, and I'm gonna go ahead and just pack that thing around just like that, right along the hook shank. And there we go, we're baited up and ready to go and get it down to the bottom. Okay, jumping over to my float fishing setup. Same 2 to 6 pound rod, 3000 series reel, same line, all the way down to what I have here though is a bobber stop this time. This is just a little rubber stop that actually crimps onto your line with a piece of wire, and it creates a stop. You can use a thread, nail knot, anything like that to create that bobber stop, or even a piece of split shot if you're really desperate out there to control your depth. And this is for fishing the middle column of the lake. You don't want to be necessarily on the bottom, and you don't want to be on the surface. You want to be in those mid ranges, and this slides up and down on your line to adjust your depth. Again, all the way down to a half-ounce lead, to a barrel swivel, same 12 pound test with about a 4 foot leader, down to my same bait hook on here, which works great to hold that cheese on there. So that's that setup. And then the third, but not least, is the trolling setup. And this works really good on the trolling setup because you're moving that bait along through the water columns around the lake, and it's constantly going around and hunting for fish. So what I have here, this is an Okuma kokanee black rod. It's really nice. I think this is about a 4 to 8 pound rod. Really nice trolling rod, a little bit oversized reel, but this is the Okuma cold water reel. I got 30-pound test on here because I use this reel for a lot of different stuff. But what I did here is I came all the way down, and how I set my trolling setup up on this one is with a wedding ring setup, which is really effective, and we're gonna go over this in another tutorial, so stay tuned and be sure to go down in the links below and look for more of our tutorials, because I'm gonna go through a full tutorial on how to fish a wedding ring here soon enough. But what I have here is all the way down to a snap clevis, which I've run up my main line. Again, a little 12-pound bumper. Little tag end coming off here of some light line so I can add my weight whenever I go to troll. I'm gonna add whatever 1, 2, 3, 4 ounce, depending on how deep I wanna be in that lake. Down to a barrel swivel. Again, about a 4-foot leader, 5-foot leader, all the way down to the end of your wedding ring. And so these wedding rings are a really cool little gadget here. It's one of the most effective ways to troll for any kind of trout or walleye or any kind of fish species if you're gonna be trolling behind the boat. And it's just a little French blade with a couple bead setups, and the wedding ring in between is where it gets its iconic name, is that sparkly little ring there in the middle. This has a tiny little hook on it. What I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna take my Gerber scissors here and I'm gonna cut that thing right off. And I'm gonna add a different hook. Again, that mustad bait hook. These are cool little mustad trout packs that have every single size of hook. And these will last you a long time out on the lake or the river, depending on where you're at. So I'm gonna take that bait hook and I'm just gonna run it right onto my line there. That way that cheese will actually stay on my hook the whole time. Run that through really quick. And if you want, you can even run a trailer hook so that you can have 2 hooks on there and even 2 pieces of cheese, or a piece of cheese and some corn or whatever you're gonna wanna have baited up on that trout hook. So there we go, snip my little snip there. And now I have a much more effective hook setup for that wedding ring here. And that's the trolling setup. So I'm gonna be trolling that behind a boat, and that's how I'm gonna fish this out of a boat if that's gonna be the case that I'm gonna be trolling. But these 2 methods are great for the bank or anywhere you're gonna be fishing, whether it be river, lake, anywhere from the shore. It's gonna work good because you can cover a lot of water out in front of you. So for the trolling aspect of this, what I've done here is I've added about a 3-ounce lead right here on my line, just with just a little loop knot right to the end of the lead there. And that way, if that gets snagged, it'll break off and not break off my whole setup. I went and go ahead and squished my cheese onto my hook there, just a little trailer, just like that. And I'm gonna set this out, put it in the rod holder, and get my other stuff out of the way here. I'm gonna set this down about 20 some, and go about 15 or 16 feet on my line counter. That's what's really nice about this cold water reel, is it's got this line counter there that keeps you in the know on how deep you're fishing. I'm gonna go about 19 there, keep it a few feet off the bottom. I'm gonna set it in my rod holder, just like so, and pray for a fish. Okay, now I have my slide float set up here with me. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna register, if I don't know the depth of the lake, I'm gonna start shallow, maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4 feet. And if I know it's a deep lake, like what's out in front of me here is about 14 or 15 feet deep, I'm gonna go to that middle column. So I want that bobber stop here, that little red stopper, to be about 7 feet. So my arm span's about 6. So I'm gonna go 6, pull out a little bit more line here, and go on out to about 7 feet here, just like so. And that's gonna register exactly what depth I'm gonna be sitting at, because again, that bait's gonna be floating, so it's gonna be sitting right about here. So I want my lead to be sitting at about 7 feet so that my bait's sitting about 6 to 7 feet in that water column. So I'm gonna take, once again, big fingerful of my cheese here. So this is a very good method. I'm gonna get my cheese here, again, pressing it onto, I'm starting back over. So I'm gonna get my cheese here, pressing it back onto the hook just like so with my fingertips, getting a nice little ball formed around the end of that hook. And this is a great method. The bobber setup is a great method for if you're stuck on the bank on the lake, so that if you can cover a lot of water at different water columns, and like a day like today, we have a nice little breeze, you can cast out and walk that setup down the bank, and or set it up on a stick or on a rock on the bank and just sit there and watch that float sit out in front of you and wait for it to get pulled under. But what I'm gonna do here, now that I put my bait on, I'm just gonna make a nice little cast out into the lake here. Make sure to be nice and gentle with that so that your cheese doesn't fall off as soon as it hits the water. And I'm gonna let that sink down to about my 7-foot mark, and I'm gonna reel it tight. I'm gonna always leave a little bit of slack on the water so that I'm not pulling against or inflicting that bobber while it's out there. And I'm gonna set my rod down on the rod holder. I'm gonna keep it in my hand. I'm gonna wait for that float to get pulled down and under, and let's fish this and see if we can get a couple fish to bite. Okay, now on to the bottom fishing setup. Once again, I have my 1/2 ounce float, or 1/2 ounce weight, sliding up and down my line. I got my barrel swivel. 4-foot leader to my bait hook. I'm gonna take another little chunk of cheese here. I'm actually getting hungry now playing with this cheese all morning. Gonna have to bring the stove out and cook up some hamburger and make me some chip dip. Okay, let's squish that on there again. And now for this setup, you really wanna be careful to throw it nice and gently because you don't want it to hit the water, shoot down to the bottom and rip that bait off your hook and have you down there fishing for hours without any bait on. So nice little slow arching cast, end with your tip high in the air so that you don't whip it too hard and let that thing fly out there and land in the water. It's important that you only see 2 splashes. If you see 3 splashes, it means the bait has actually flown off your hook and landed somewhere else in the pond or in the lake, and you're not gonna be fishing because you don't have any bait on your hook. So you're gonna make sure that hits the bottom, let line out until it does. You're gonna reel it tight, and this is a great way to fish from the bank. You can also fish on an anchor with a boat and sit and use this bottom fishing technique. It works really good if you kind of pinpoint where those fish are and wanna sit right there on them. You're gonna reel that tight, and I got my little rod holder here on my kicker motor. I'm gonna set that right in the rod holder there. And the way you're gonna detect a bite here on this setup is by looking for that rod tip. When you do see a bite, and we're gonna stay fishing here for a little bit and try to catch some fish for you guys, but when you do see a bite, you'll see it start to slowly register on that tip, bouncing up and down. That fish will be grabbing, sliding your line through that weight on the bottom and hopefully hooking itself. And when you go to set that hook, you'll grab the rod, lift up and set hook. All right, everybody, well, that's a few different methods that you can use to fish with this Velveeta cheese. It's a really good, effective method, and also it allows you to have a nice snack out on the river or out on the lake if fishing is pretty slow. It really goes good with some nacho dip or honestly just some pretzels or anything like that. So, but Velveeta cheese, do not forget it. If you need that extra little edge when you're out on the lake or out on the ponds fishing for stock or trout anywhere in the world or anywhere in the US, be sure to take that Velveeta cheese with you. You guys won't regret it. Thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. If you haven't done it already, like we talked about in the beginning of the video, go down here, give this video a thumbs up, drop us a comment down below if you've ever used any kind of crafty thing like this to catch trout before in your life. And do not forget to hit that little subscribe button and that bell notification so that you can see more of these videos that we have coming out every single day. So thank you for tuning in, guys. Stay fishy. We'll see you out there.